Being alone in your own place changes the way safety works. The locks still lock, the walls still stand, the neighbors still exist somewhere behind drywall, but your brain stops sharing the load with anyone else. Every creak has to get processed by you. Every little shadow in the corner has to get named by you. That kind of solitude turns ordinary things into evidence. I matched with a guy on a dating app on Valentine's Eve, and within about 30 seconds, I realized his profile pictures were taken inside my apartment. This was literally last night, February 13th, and I'm saying it now because Valentine's Day makes people swipe for the dumbest, most human reasons. Boredom, loneliness, a little bit of spite, a little bit of hope you don't want to admit out loud. That was me, in sweats that still smelled like detergent, sitting sideways on my couch because my phone charger barely reached, with Netflix turned down low like it was background noise for breathing. And the worst part is, the first time I noticed something was off, I didn't block him. I sat there trying to explain it away like an idiot. Denial feels like intelligence for the first few seconds. Your brain will build an entire courtroom argument just to avoid the one conclusion that makes your throat tighten. At first glance, he looked normal. Not model perfect, not blurry bathroom selfies. Clean photos, a decent bio, no weird angry rants. The kind of profile you don't even remember 5 swipes later. Except, his pictures were staged. That was the first glitch. They weren't just selfies. They were wide, careful angles, like the kind of photos landlords use when they want to make beige walls look like a lifestyle. One of them wasn't even of him, not really. It was him off to the side, smiling, and the room behind him was doing most of the talking. My thumb stopped moving. My brain did that thing where it tries to keep the night normal. It told me it was just an apartment. Every city has the same apartments. Every building has that one layout with the living room that opens into the kitchen like it's pretending to be a loft. Everyone buys the same cheap furniture when they move out for the first time. And then I saw the lamp. That stupid IKEA floor lamp everyone owns. The tall one with the little bowl shade that throws light upward and makes the ceiling glow. I have one. Half my friends have one. It's basically a rite of passage. Seeing it in his photo didn't prove anything. But my body still reacted like it mattered. My hands went cold in that specific way that makes your fingertips feel far away, like they're not fully attached to you anymore. I remember rubbing my thumb against my index finger, like friction could bring me back. So I did the reasonable thing, the thing that makes the story worse. I zoomed in. The lamp was in the same spot mine was in, not just near a wall. It was tucked between the arm of a couch and the window, in the exact narrow wedge where I keep it because nowhere else looks right. I noticed a throw blanket too, a chunky knit pale green. Target. Mine is Target. Half the planet has that blanket. I told myself it was coincidence so hard I almost believed it. I took a screenshot anyway. Actually, wait, it might have been 2 screenshots, one of the whole profile, and then one zoomed in on the background. My camera roll shows 2 versions, and I don't remember taking the second one, which is the part that makes my stomach twist now. My hands were working on instinct, while my brain was still negotiating. Then I scrolled to the next photo. In that one, he was standing closer to the camera. The angle was lower, like someone held a phone near chest height. Behind him was a little strip of kitchen, white cabinets, cheap metal handles, a refrigerator with a top freezer. Normal, generic, common. Except one cabinet handle was crooked. Not tilted in the way all cheap cabinets tilt, crooked, like mine. The bottom screw on one of my cabinet handles has been loose since I moved in. I tightened it once, it came loose again, and I've been meaning to fix it for months because the idea of taking a screwdriver to it felt like admitting this place was permanent. His photo had the same handle, leaning down on the right side like it was tired. My throat did something awful. like it tried to swallow my tongue. I zoomed in so hard the pixels broke apart. A little farther down, on the edge of the rug that peeks out from under my coffee table, there's a stain. It's not even dramatic, a small, darker patch where I spilled coffee and scrubbed too aggressively, like a bruise in the fabric. I know exactly where it is because I orient the table to cover it when people come over. The stain was in his photo. Not a stain, that shape, that smudged crescent that looks like a thumbprint. My heart started hitting my ribs in a way that felt loud enough to be heard through the walls. The Netflix dialogue kept going, cheerful and stupid, and I couldn't process the words anymore. Sound became texture. Light became harsh. The air felt thinner. I held my breath without noticing. My chest locked up like I was bracing for impact. The denial didn't disappear gracefully. It snapped. 1 second I was building excuses, and next second my body had already decided the truth and left my mind behind to catch up. Someone had been inside my apartment. I didn't think about ghosts. I didn't think about anything cinematic. I thought about keys, maintenance copies, the lock that sticks sometimes, the times I propped the door open with my foot while carrying groceries, the few seconds an elevator door stays open while you're juggling bags, the little moments you forget to be careful because being careful all the time is exhausting. My phone felt slick in my hand. I set it down on the couch like it was hot. Then I stood up too fast and got that rush of dizziness, that empty elevator drop in the stomach, and I had to steady myself on the back of the couch. My knees felt wrong, like the joints weren't aligned. I listened. The building has its usual sounds. Pipes, someone's TV, a distant elevator ding, footsteps that pass and keep going. Those sounds are background until your brain decides they are a threat, and then they all sound like someone choosing where to step. I heard nothing specific. That was worse. My feet moved before my thoughts did. I went to my front door and pressed my fingers against the deadbolt like touch could tell me the history of it. Deadbolt. Locked. Chain. Hooked. I checked it again. Then again, but slower, like the second time could rewrite reality. My hands were shaking enough that the chain made that tiny metal rattle when I touched it. I hated that sound immediately. It felt like an announcement. I turned on more lights. Overhead, kitchen, hallway, every switch I could reach. The room went from cozy to exposed, like a stage where the audience is too close. I checked my windows, the latch in the bedroom, the little gap in the living room window where it never quite seals. All closed, all as they should be. I walked back to my phone like it might have changed while I looked away. His profile was still there. My screenshot was still there. The details were still there. Then my phone buzzed. A message. Casual, normal, like the world hadn't just tilted. You have really good lighting in your living room. That line didn't read like a threat. That's what made my skin go tight. It was familiar in the way that makes your mouth go dry. It was the kind of thing someone says after standing in a space and letting their eyes adjust. The kind of comment you make when you're waiting for someone to pour a drink. My vision tunneled for a second. Not blackout, just that narrowing, like the edges of the room were less important than the idea of him somewhere nearby, comfortably describing my light. My thumb hovered over the screen, useless. My brain started spitting out options too fast. Block him, reply, ask him what he meant, report him, call someone, check the peephole, go to the bathroom and lock the door like that would help, hide, run. I didn't do the brave thing, I did the animal thing. I didn't answer him. I went back to the door. I put my eye to the peephole and stared until the muscles around my eyes started to ache. The hallway outside was empty. The light out there was dim and flat, the kind that makes every corner look like it could hold a person if you blink wrong. No one. I stayed there too long anyway, because hope looks like staring at emptiness and begging it to stay empty. My phone buzzed again. Another message. Not angry, not threatening, just present, still up. My stomach clenched so hard it felt like I'd missed a step on a staircase. Heat rushed up my neck, then drained out of my face. My scalp prickled. My ears started doing that thing where they feel full, like pressure before a storm. There are moments when your body decides you are prey and logic becomes a decoration. I couldn't even swallow correctly. Saliva turned thick. I grabbed my phone and hit call on my friend Mia. Not texting, calling. I needed another human voice in the room immediately because silence starts feeling like consent. She picked up on the second ring, sleepy, confused, and I didn't even let her say hello properly. Words came out of me in the wrong order, like I was dumping a drawer on the floor. Dating app, match, photos, my lamp, my rug stain. He messaged me about my lighting. Mia went quiet in a way that made my chest spasm. Then her voice sharpened, all the sleep gone. She told me to keep her on speaker. She told me to grab my keys. She told me not to open the door for anyone, not for a knock, not for a voice, not for someone saying they were building security. Her tone made everything more real, because it wasn't comforting, it was operational. My hands fumbled through my bag for my keys and I dropped them on the hardwood. The sound cracked through the apartment, too loud, too sharp. I crouched to pick them up, and the angle of the room changed, like being lower made me more vulnerable. I packed without looking away from the front door for more than a second at a time. Phone charger, wallet, hoodie, my meds, the external battery I barely use. I shoved things into a tote like I was scooping water out of a sinking boat. My phone buzzed again. I didn't read it at first. I couldn't. The notification banner showed the start of it anyway. Door chain looks. My vision flashed white for a split second, like my brain tried to protect itself by turning everything off. My fingers went numb around the tote strap. The chain. He knew about the chain. That meant he had seen it recently, or he was seeing it now. I backed away from the door without meaning to. Just 2 steps, like my body was trying to put distance between me and the wood and metal that suddenly looked paper thin. Mia was still talking, her voice coming through my phone like a rope. She told me to leave, not later, not after I calmed down, now. Leaving an apartment when you think someone is outside your door feels backwards. Every instinct says stay inside, stay behind locks, stay where you have walls. But the other truth is that your home stops being a shelter the second someone else has access to it. Then it's just a container. I turned off the main lights. Actually, no, I left them on. I remember my hand hovering near the switch and then deciding light was better. Light makes hiding harder. I moved quietly. Shoes, coat, keys already in my hand threaded between my fingers hard enough to hurt. I opened the door like it was a wound. Chain still on, door cracked. My eye pressed to the gap. Hallway, empty and dead. I slipped the chain off. The metal clicked, and I flinched so hard my shoulder popped. Then I stepped out and pulled the door shut behind me, fast, like I was cutting off a limb. I didn't lock it delicately. I threw the deadbolt with my whole hand. My fingers were clumsy. The key scraped. My breath came in short, sharp pulls, and I tasted something sour at the back of my throat. I went to the stairs, not the elevator. The elevator is a box. The stairs are open. My legs felt rubbery, like they were running in a dream where the hallway never ends. I didn't look back. Outside, the air hit my face cold and wet, and I realized I'd been sweating under my hoodie. My car keys shook in my hands so badly I missed the button the first time. The second time, the lights flashed, and I almost cried, just from the relief of a tiny machine obeying me. I got in, locked the doors immediately, and my hands were shaking so hard the steering wheel buzzed under my grip. Mia kept talking. She told me to drive to her place. She told me not to go to a well-lit parking lot and sit alone, because alone was the whole problem. She stayed on the phone the entire drive, filling the silence with directions and little grounding details, like naming what street I was on, naming what color the next light was, keeping me tethered to the normal world. At her place, I sat on her couch and stared at her living room like it was a luxury. The simple fact of another person moving around, making tea, turning on a lamp felt like medicine. My body didn't relax exactly. It just stopped trying to climb out of itself. I didn't sleep much. My eyes kept jerking open. Every time her radiator clicked, my heart answered it. In the morning, with daylight making everything look less insane, I opened the app again. Part of me wanted proof to still be there, because proof means you aren't crazy. Proof means you can show someone and they have to believe you. His profile was gone. Not unmatched, not blocked, gone like he'd never existed. That disappearance was its own kind of violence. It felt like someone stealing the only fingerprint they'd left behind. I filed a report anyway. My voice sounded thin when I explained it to the officer, like I was describing a dream I didn't fully trust. Screenshot evidence, a profile with no last name, a message about lighting, a message about my door chain. There wasn't much they could do immediately. No injury, no forced entry I could prove, no suspect with a real identity. The officer's face stayed polite, but his eyes had that look people get when they're deciding how much empathy to spend. After that, I did all the things people do when they realize how flimsy privacy actually is. I called my landlord, I asked about master keys and maintenance logs. I bought a cheap camera that points at my front door. I asked for the locks to be changed and didn't accept next week as an answer. I went back to my apartment in the afternoon with Mia, and even with the sun out and another person beside me, my body didn't believe the space belonged to me anymore. The air smelled the same, my detergent still sat under the sink, my stupid IKEA lamp still stood in its corner like it had never betrayed me. The worst part was how normal everything looked. No drawers pulled out, no footprints, no broken window, no note. Just my home, arranged the exact way someone had photographed it. That night, when Mia finally left and I stood alone in my living room again, I kept catching myself looking at the places a person could stand without being seen from the couch. The little blind spot behind the half wall, the angle by the hallway, the dark line where the bedroom door doesn't quite close all the way. I opened my phone to delete the app, and my screenshot stared back at me. The pixels of my own rug stain frozen in a stranger's profile like a joke nobody else was in on. There is a specific kind of fear that doesn't feel like screaming. It feels like learning. It feels like your body rewriting the rules of your life in real time, quietly, permanently. And the thing that keeps replaying, the part that makes my hands go cold all over again, is how normal his message sounded. You have really good lighting in your living room. Because that sentence only makes sense if someone has already stood in your space long enough to notice. Apartment hallways teach you a specific kind of fear. The kind that has nothing to do with monsters and everything to do with how close a stranger can get to you without making a sound. It is the knowledge that your front door is the only thing between your whole life and whatever decides it gets to touch you. That kind of fear changes the way you listen. It turns every little hallway noise into a measurement of distance. I have not told many people this, because once you say it out loud, it stops sounding like a normal story and starts sounding like the beginning of one. The kind where everyone says you should have done something sooner. The kind where you get judged for not being psychic. It was the week leading up to Valentine's Day. I remember that part perfectly, because the grocery store by my job had those cheap red displays everywhere, and the radio at work kept doing the same 3 love songs like they were trying to hypnotize everyone into buying flowers and forgiving each other. I was working closing shifts all week. Front desk, corporate building, nothing glamorous. The schedule was the schedule, 4 to midnight most nights. You start living in that little window where the sun is already gone by the time you get off, and the world feels like it belongs to other people. I would come home with that weird vibration in my legs from standing all day, unlock my door, kick my shoes off right there, and eat whatever I could microwave in under 3 minutes. Usually those Annie's Mac cups or leftover rice if I had any. Then I would half-watch something on Netflix with the volume too low, scrolling on my phone until my eyes did that dry, burning thing. My building is normal. That is the part that makes everything worse. Beige hallways, that faint old carpet smell that never goes away, doors with the same cheap brass numbers, the kind of place where you recognize people by their jackets and their dogs, but you don't actually know their names. There is a camera in the lobby that points at nothing important, and there's a sign about security that feels like a joke once you've lived there long enough. The front door needs a key fob, but half the time someone holds it open because they're being polite. Polite is how people get in. The first night, I got off work and my brain was already in that autopilot mode. I remember fumbling with my keys at my door, thinking about absolutely nothing, and then my eyes went down. Fresh red roses, a whole bouquet, sitting right on my stupid little doormat like they belonged there. It looked recent, not wilted, not the sad leftover kind. The petals were tight and clean, and the plastic wrap around them still had that glossy crinkle. No card, no little envelope, no name, just roses in my hallway, in front of my door, where anyone could stand and watch me bend down and pick them up. My body did this weird thing where it tried to feel flattered before it felt anything else. That is what Valentine's week does. It makes flowers feel normal enough to excuse. It makes you reach for the safest explanation because the world is already handing you one. I stood there holding the bouquet like an idiot, keys still in my hand, and my eyes went up and down the hallway. The air felt too still. I could hear someone's TV through a wall, muffled laughter from a sitcom. It was so normal it almost smoothed it over. I took the roses inside. I hate that I took them inside. I put them in a pitcher because I do not own a vase, and I washed my hands like I had touched something dirty and I could not explain why. The next day I came home, and there were roses again. Same spot, same kind, neat, centered on the doormat like someone had taken a second to line them up. My mouth went dry in that instant way, like my body knew something my brain was still trying to argue with. My keys slipped a little in my fingers. I remember the metal feeling too cold. I told myself it was someone at work being cheesy. I told myself it was a wrong door, a neighbor with a similar unit number, a delivery mistake, a weird Valentine's promo, anything that didn't require my life to change. That is the part people never understand. The safer explanation is addictive. It lets you keep your routine. And I could not afford for my life to change. Rent was already stupid, and moving on short notice means fees and deposits and time off work I did not have. I had no partner, no roommate, no spare bedroom at a friend's place that I could just slide into for a week. I also did not want to be the person at work who made it a thing. That sounds ugly to say, but it is true. The world punishes women for being dramatic, and it punishes them harder for being right. So, I did what everyone does when they're trying not to panic. I rationalized, I minimized, I made it cute. By day 3, it was not cute anymore. Day 3, I came home a little earlier than usual. Not by hours, just earlier. I think I swapped a task with someone and got to leave at like 11:30 instead of midnight. Actually, wait, it wasn't 11:30. It was closer to 11 because I remember checking the time in the elevator and thinking it felt like cheating. Roses were still there. That was the first time my stomach did that heavy drop, like my insides had taken a step forward and the rest of me stayed behind. It meant the person wasn't guessing one specific time. It meant they had a window. It meant they were comfortable waiting in my hallway, placing them, and leaving with enough confidence to do it again. I started doing little tests without admitting to myself they were tests. I stopped posting anything that showed I was out. Not that I posted much anyway, but I got careful. No story, no check-in, no casual picture of my dinner at work. It did not matter. Roses still showed up. I came home later one night. That one I remember because the elevator smelled like someone's takeout curry and it made me nauseous. It was after 12:30 because we got slammed at the desk and I stayed to help. I walked down the hall already bracing, already trying to prepare my face to see them. They were there. My skin went tight across my arms. The hallway felt narrower, like the walls had moved in while I was gone. By day 4, I stopped picking them up right away. I would stand there with my keys in the lock, holding my breath without meaning to, listening for the smallest shift of sound. A floorboard, a door chain, someone's phone vibrating, anything that would tell me I wasn't alone out there. Everything stayed quiet. That quiet started to feel like a decision. I tried to make it normal by making it a joke at work. I said it like it was a funny Valentine's thing, like someone had a crush and was being shy. I even smiled when I said it, because smiling makes people treat you like you are safe. One of my coworkers looked genuinely confused and swore it wasn't them. Another one laughed and said I was living in a rom-com. Then this guy I barely talked to, not a bad guy, just a guy who always seems to be around. He said it in this offhand voice like it meant nothing. "Oh yeah, I see you come and go all the time." He said it like it was commenting on the weather, like it was neighborly, like he was letting me know he was observant. My throat closed up so fast I almost choked on my own saliva. My ears started ringing a little, and that is how I knew my body had filed it under danger, even if my brain wanted to keep filing everything under normal. I laughed anyway. I hate that I laughed. By day 5, the roses looked too intentional. Same type, same tight buds, same placement, always neat, always like a ritual. Romance is messy. This was routine. Routine is for people who plan. I started coming home differently, parking farther away, taking a longer path, watching reflections in glass, checking the lobby before I got into the elevator. I started holding my keys between my fingers when I walked down the hall, not like in movies, just enough to make myself feel less soft. My shoulders stayed up around my ears without me meaning to. My jaw hurt from clenching. I called my mom and almost told her, then didn't. I told myself it would just make her worry, and that was true, but it was also another excuse to keep it inside my own head where I could pretend I had control over it. Day 6, there was a little box of chocolate next to the roses. Not fancy, not Godiva, one of those drugstore boxes, the kind you grab by the register at CVS. It was positioned like a gift display, like the person had stepped back and adjusted it until it looked right. My hands went cold so fast my fingers felt numb. I picked up the chocolate and it was room temperature, not warm from someone's hand, which meant it had been sitting there a while. That meant whoever put it there had time to leave. That meant they were not scared of being caught on my floor. I didn't take them inside that night. I left them there for a second, door cracked, my body halfway in my apartment, because bringing them inside started to feel like letting someone into my space on purpose. I slept with my phone on my chest like a second heartbeat. Every time a pipe creaked or someone's door closed down the hall, my eyes snapped open and my mouth tasted like metal.
Day 7 is the one that keeps replaying in my head in pieces, like my brain still doesn't want to show me the whole thing at once. I came home and the roses were there again. Of course they were. The hallway light above my door was flickering, just slightly, and it made the petals look like they were moving when they weren't.
There was something tucked under the plastic wrap this time. At first, I thought it was a note, and my whole body did this ugly surge, heat rushing at my neck, because a note would make it real in a way I couldn't talk around. It wasn't a note. It was a receipt. Folded small, jammed under the bouquet like someone had hidden it there on purpose. My fingers were shaking so hard I could barely unfold it. The paper made that dry crackle sound that felt too loud in the hallway. My keys were still in the lock, and my hand kept bumping them, metal tapping metal, and I could not make myself stop. The receipt was from a grocery store florist, one of the places near my work, the kind with the little flower station by the entrance. The ink was fresh and dark. The date was that day. And on the back, in pen, like someone had written it quickly, there were lines. Her shifts. Mun, tu, wen, thur, fry, 4 to 12. Sat, 2 to 10. I stared at it so long my eyes stopped focusing. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was shaking my ribs. My mouth filled up with saliva like I was about to throw up. The hallway suddenly smelled sour like old trash, even though it always smelled like carpet cleaner out there. The keys were still in the lock. I froze, with my hand on the knob and my head tilted slightly, listening. Breathing makes noise when you're trying not to breathe. I could hear my own breath snagging, little shallow pulls. I could hear the building settling, the soft tick of something in the wall. Someone's footsteps from a floor above. No one running, no one rushing, no dramatic anything. That was the worst part. It felt like the person who wrote that was calm. My brain tried to do math. It tried to find a way the schedule could be guessed. It tried to tell me it was coincidence. But the schedule was too specific. It wasn't just that I worked nights. It was the exact blocks. It was the pattern. It was the kind of information that comes from somewhere official or from someone watching long enough to be sure. And the flowers weren't a gift anymore. They were a check-in. A way to confirm when I was home to see them, a way to mark my door and force me to touch proof that someone could get to it. My hands went so numb the receipt almost slipped out of my fingers. I pressed my back against my door like I could physically hold it closed from the outside, which is such a stupid instinct, but instincts are not smart. They're just loud. I got inside. I locked everything. The deadbolt, the chain, that extra little flip lock like it could stop anyone who actually wanted in. I turned off all the lights except the kitchen one and stood there with the receipt in my hand, staring at my own cabinets like they were going to explain it. I didn't cry right away. My body does this thing where it waits until it's safe, and then it betrays me. I just stood there sweating, cold sweat, hair sticking to the back of my neck, and I kept wiping my palms on my pants like that would get the feeling off. The next few days got small. That's the only way I can describe it. My world shrank to routines and precautions. I stopped going straight home. I would drive around the block once, sometimes twice, checking the rearview mirror so often my eyes ached. I would sit in my car with the engine off and the doors locked, listening to the ticking as it cooled, watching the entrance to my building like it was a crime scene. I started calling a friend before I even got out of the car, staying on speaker until my door was locked behind me, talking about nothing, keeping my voice steady because if my voice shook, then it would become real. I told building management. They did that corporate sympathy face and wrote down what I said like it was a maintenance request. They said they would check the cameras. They said the cameras didn't cover my floor. They said to remind residents not to let strangers in. They said to call the police if anything escalated. I called the non-emergency line and made a report with a voice that didn't sound like mine. The person on the phone was polite in that tired way, like they had heard 1,000 versions of this, and none of them ended neatly. Without a suspect, without footage, without a direct threat written in ink, there wasn't much they could do beyond documenting it. Documenting it felt like putting a bandage on a feeling. At work, I asked my manager about the schedule. I asked them to stop posting it where anyone walking by could glance at it. I tried to say it casually, and my tongue felt too big in my mouth. My manager frowned and said they would move it to a staff-only area. They acted like I was being overly cautious, but they still did it, which meant they understood enough to do it. I swapped shifts where I could. I asked for escorts to my car at night. I started leaving through different exits. I wore my hair tucked into my jacket so it didn't stand out from behind. I changed the way I carried my bag. I started scanning faces in the lobby, not even consciously, just automatically, my eyes grabbing details, shoes, hands, posture. And then the roses stopped. The first night, there were no flowers. My body didn't relax. It did the opposite. It felt like stepping onto a stair that isn't there. That absence hit harder than the presence, because it meant the person had changed the pattern on purpose. Silence is a choice. Nothing is an action. A few days went by with nothing, and my sleep got worse instead of better. I started waking up at 3 in the morning with my heart sprinting, convinced I had heard my doorknob turn. I would lie there with my eyes open until the sky outside my blinds went from black to that washed-out early gray. Then, weeks later, not even close to Valentine's Day anymore, I came home and there was one single rose. Just one. No bouquet, no chocolate, no receipt. It was placed right in the center of my doormat, like a dot at the end of a sentence. My knees went weak so fast I had to grab the wall to keep myself upright. The hallway light buzzed overhead, and I could hear my neighbor's dishwasher running, and the normal sounds of a normal building made it feel even more unreal, like the whole place was participating in pretending nothing was happening. I didn't pick it up. I stepped over it like it was a wire. I never found out who it was. There was no reveal, no confrontation, no satisfying answer where the villain gets handcuffed and everything goes back to before. It just stayed in my life, the way a smell stays in a room after someone leaves. And even now, coming home feels different. My hand still hesitates on my keys. My eyes still go to the floor first. That one rose did what the whole week of bouquets couldn't. It made it clear the flowers were never the point. Access was the point. Couples-only getaways make people drop their guard in a way nothing else does. The word romantic turns a strange hallway into a safe hallway. It turns thin doors into cozy. It turns isolation into private. That's the trick. Romance is just a softer wrapper for the same thing every predator wants, which is access. It was Valentine's weekend, literally February 14th. I remember that part because I booked it like a big surprise, and I kept checking the date on my phone the whole week, making sure I didn't mess it up and ruin the whole thing. The place was about 2 hours from us, one of those small boutique inns that looks handmade on Instagram, string lights in the trees, staged blankets draped over porch swings, everything beige and warm like it was designed by a person who has never been cold. We drove up in my white Toyota RAV4, and I did the whole annoying, we should stop for snacks thing halfway there, so we ended up at a gas station buying things nobody actually wants, like heart-shaped Reese's and a bottle of water that cost more than it should. I brought my Nintendo Switch for the drive because long trips turn quiet in a way that feels like a bad mood even when it isn't, and having something dumb like Mario Kart keeps the air light. Bringing a Switch on trips feels childish until it's midnight somewhere unfamiliar and you need your hands to do something besides shake. By the time we got there, it was already dark, and the road into the property was narrow, just enough gravel that the tires made that crunchy sound that always makes the back of your neck tighten, like you're trespassing even when you're not. The main building had these soft yellow lights and a little sign that said something about love and escape, and the parking lot was too quiet for how full it looked. Check-in was curated, that's the only word for it. There were heart-shaped cookies on a plate and a little glass jar with pink-wrapped mints, and the person at the desk kept saying Happy Valentine's in this practiced sing-song way, like they'd been repeating it since noon and their mouth was on autopilot. They handed us a little welcome bag with cheap champagne that had a foil label trying really hard to look expensive, and 2 plastic flutes wrapped in tissue paper. The whole thing was cute in that forced way, like a school dance. Our room was in a separate little cabins behind the main building. Not far, but far enough that you stopped hearing the lobby and started hearing the dark. Wind through bare branches, that distant hum from a road you couldn't see, the soft smack of someone's car door closing somewhere else on the property. The door had one of those keypad locks that always feels like a toy, and then a deadbolt above it that didn't sit right. I remember turning it and it didn't do that solid, satisfying catch. It just kind of met resistance, like it was pretending to lock. I did it again. Same thing. The metal felt loose in the frame. Inside was exactly what you'd expect. Overpriced candles, a bed made too neatly, thin curtains that looked like they were meant to be photographed, not meant to block anything. There was a sliding glass door to a tiny patio where a hot tub sat under a pergola with string lights, and it smelled faintly like chlorine and that fake linen spray hotels use to convince you cleanliness has a scent. On the nightstand, there was a printed rule card, the kind on thick paper with a little logo at the top. Most of it was normal. Quiet hours, towel hooks, checkout time, and then, buried in the same calm font as everything else, there was a line that made my eyes stop moving. If you find a love letter under your pillow, do not open it. Call the front desk. It wasn't stylized, it wasn't cute, it didn't have a wink to it. It was written like a fire escape route, like it had been typed after something already happened. I laughed because the body tries to turn certain kinds of wrong into a joke first. My partner laughed too, and for a second it felt like a dumb Valentine gimmick, like maybe guests hide notes as a tradition and the inn leans into it. The kind of thing you roll your eyes at and still tell your friends about later. At the desk, when I mentioned it earlier, actually wait, I mentioned it right then before we even left the lobby because it bugged me. The person working there didn't lean in like it was a secret, didn't lower their voice, didn't even act like it was weird. They just did this little shrug with their shoulders and said, real casual, like they were talking about extra towels. Yeah, if you see one, you just don't open it. That was the first moment my stomach did that slow, sinking tilt. Not a full drop, just the beginning of one. Because normal gimmicks come with a smile. Normal gimmicks come with an explanation. That line came with nothing. But it was Valentine's. The booking was non-refundable. The weather had turned into that wet cold that makes the highway shine, and the drive back would have been long and tense, and I didn't want to be the person who ruins a surprise over a stupid rule card. There is a particular kind of social pressure that happens inside a couple when one person feels a splinter and the other person just wants to enjoy the day. You swallow the splinter because you love them. Cell service was already spotty, and the Wi-Fi was on a little card with a code that kept failing. I typed it in twice, then again. Then I did the thing where you copy it carefully like you're defusing a bomb, and it still didn't connect. My phone floated between 1 bar and nothing, like it couldn't decide if it wanted to help. We went out to dinner in town because the inn had recommended this romantic place with a chalkboard sign and string lights. It was fine. Overpriced pasta, too much garlic. The kind of restaurant where every table has a little candle and the staff smiles too hard because they can smell the tips in the air. We came back and did the hot tub because that was the whole point, right? Steam and cold air, shoulders loosening, the night going soft around the edges. We joked about the romance package and drank the cheap champagne that tasted like a headache. For a while, it worked. The brain tucked the rule card into a drawer in the back of my head and sat on it. Later, in bed, the room sounded different. Hotels and cabins always do that at night. Every small noise comes through the walls like it's happening right next to your ear. Footsteps in the gravel, a door shutting somewhere down the row, the faint click of a keypad. The kind of sound you normally ignore in an apartment because it's just life around you. But in a place you don't know, every sound arrives carrying a little message. My partner fell asleep fast. The day had been long, and the drive, and the hot tub. Their breathing evened out, and the room got that heavy, sleepy stillness, like the air was thickened.
I lay there staring at the ceiling, and my hand kept wanting to move, not because I was curious in a fun way. Curiosity isn't the right word. It was that small, nagging compulsion to check the thing you were told not to check, the way you touch a sore tooth with your tongue even though it hurts. I slid my hand under the pillow. My fingers hit paper. My whole body went tight in one instant, like every muscle remembered something older than me. I pulled it out slowly, because moving fast felt loud, and I didn't want to wake my partner yet. The envelope was plain. No hotel logo, no cute red wax seal, just cheap, off-white paper. Thick black marker on the front said in blocky handwriting, "For you, don't open." It wasn't playful. It was instruction. My hands went cold so fast my fingertips started to sting, the kind of cold that comes from inside, not from the room. My mouth went dry, like my body was already rationing saliva. I just stared at it in the dim light from the bedside lamp, trying to force it back into the category of themed nonsense. I sat up and grabbed the rule card again, like the card was going to explain itself if I looked harder. It still said the same thing, calm and printed and insane. If you find a love letter under your pillow, do not open it. Call the front desk. I tried calling. The phone in the room was one of those cheap hotel phones with too many buttons, and it felt dusty. I pressed the front desk option. It rang. It rang long enough that my throat started to tighten with that trapped feeling, like your body is already preparing for nobody to pick up. Then it clicked, like someone answered, and the line went dead. I tried again, ringing, then nothing, like the call dropped into a hole. I used my cell. 1 bar. Then none. The Wi-Fi still refused the code like it was rejecting us personally. I stood there in the dark, holding this envelope, feeling my pulse thump up into my neck. Each beat felt thick and loud, like it was rattling the bones around my ears. And then I noticed something small. Our overnight bag was on the little bench by the door. I remembered zipping it all the way because I have that habit from airports, always closing things, always making sure. The zipper was open a few inches, not wide open, just enough to see the edge of a shirt. That tiny detail turned the room inside out.
Air got thin. The skin on my arms prickled, like my body was trying to lift every hair and listen through it. I looked at the closet. The closet door wasn't fully shut. It was cracked, maybe an inch, like it had been closed gently and then drifted back. I stood completely still. The envelope in my hand felt heavier, like it had weight beyond paper. There is a specific kind of realization that doesn't feel like a thought. It feels like a chemical dump. Your brain stops narrating and your body starts doing math. How far to the door? How loud the gravel is? How long it takes to start the car? How easy it would be for someone to hear. My eyes kept going to the sliding glass door, the thin curtains, the dark patio beyond. That black outside stopped feeling like scenery and started feeling like a place someone could be standing. I didn't wake my partner right away, because waking them meant saying it out loud, and saying it out loud meant making it real. My tongue felt too big for my mouth. I could hear my own breathing, shallow and careful, like I was trying to not disturb something. I tried the front desk one more time. This time, it didn't ring long. It picked up fast. A voice, tired and too normal, like they were reading from a script they hated. "Just checking, you found your letter." My spine went hot. My vision sharpened in this ugly way, like every corner of the room suddenly had edges. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat locked up, and my hand holding the receiver started shaking so hard the plastic rattled against my ear. The voice didn't change. No surprise, no confusion, just waiting, like they already knew I was there, already knew I was holding it. I hung up. I set the receiver down slowly, like sound mattered. I sat on the edge of the bed and put my hand on my partner's shoulder. I whispered their name, twice, soft, controlled. Their eyes opened, and I watched their face go from sleep to concern in a second, because my expression must have been wrong. I held the envelope low, close to my chest. I showed them the front without letting them grab it. "For you. Don't open." They started to sit up, and I pressed my hand down gently, the way you do when you're trying to keep panic from becoming noise. My lips felt numb. I told them, quietly, we were leaving now. I told them not to open it. Not here. Not anywhere. They looked at the rule card. They looked at the envelope. Their face went pale in the lamplight, and their breathing changed. Faster. Higher. That mirror effect happens fast. Fear is contagious in a closed room. We moved like we were stealing our own things. Shoes first, coats, keys. I grabbed my phone charger and then dropped it because my hands weren't listening to me. I left toiletries, I left the little welcome bag, I left the stupid plastic champagne flutes. The only thing that mattered was getting the door open and not making it into a whole scene. At the door, I tried the deadbolt again, and it still didn't catch right. That made my stomach twist so hard I thought I might actually throw up. I opened the door, and the cold air hit my face like a slap. The walkway outside was lit by those soft, decorative lights, and it should have felt pretty. It didn't. It felt like a stage set. Down near the stairwell by the vending machine, someone stood too still, not leaning, not fumbling with coins, just standing in the half-light, facing in a way that suggested they were watching the row of doors. My partner's hand clamped around my arm hard enough to hurt. We didn't speak. Words felt dangerous. We walked fast, but not running fast, because running turns you into prey in your own head. Gravel shifted under our shoes, loud in the quiet. I could hear our car before I could see it, that little ticking sound engines make when they've cooled. The lot was darker than it should have been, with trees swallowing the edges. A car sat a few spaces away with its headlights off, engine on. The silhouette inside didn't move. My key fob felt slippery in my hand. I hit unlock. The RAV4 chirped, and that small sound felt like a scream. We got inside and slammed the doors, and the air in the car smelled like stale fast food and our own adrenaline. My hands shook so badly on the steering wheel I had to grip tighter just to keep them from fluttering. I backed out too fast, tires crunching,
and for 1 second the cabin row was in the rear-view mirror like a neat little picture, every door identical, every window dark. We didn't stop until we hit a gas station off the highway with bright white lights and people coming and going, the kind of place that never really sleeps. Under those lights, my partner started crying in that silent way where tears just pour without sound because their body didn't know what else to do with the leftover surge.
I called the police from the gas station. My voice kept cracking. I sounded like someone else. They were calm in the way people get when the danger is theoretical to them, asking for details in a measured tone. They said they could send someone to take a report. They said it was hard without a suspect, hard without proof someone entered. They said hotel staff would be contacted. The inn acted annoyed. That part sticks with me more than it should. Not apologetic, not alarmed. Annoyed like we were inconveniencing them with our bad experience. They said they didn't know what letter. They said guests played pranks. They said it was probably nothing. They said the rule card was just precaution. Precaution is a word people use after something has already happened. We went home. We didn't talk much on the drive back. The car felt too small, like the silence had weight. When we got back, I dumped our bags on the floor like they were contaminated. I remember washing my hands too long, scrubbing like I could remove the feeling. 2 days later, I opened my suitcase to do laundry. The envelope was inside. Not the same one either. Or maybe it was, and my memory is trying to protect me by creating a technicality. It was plain. It smelled faintly like someone else's cologne, something sharp and clean that didn't belong to either of us. Thick black marker on the front again. You left before I finished the letter. I didn't open it. I put it in a trash bag, tied it so tight the plastic squealed, and drove it to a dumpster that wasn't ours. My hands were shaking the entire time, and even after it was gone, my body still moved like it was being watched. That part never really stopped. Even now, pillows in hotels feel wrong in a way they never used to, like there's always something flat and waiting underneath.
Out of everything we heard tonight, which story actually unsettled you the most? The first one really got under my skin, but I want to know which one did it for you. Vote for the scariest story in the comments below.